So today's focus on both this morning session and this afternoon session are going to be on, okay, how do we start implementing this within our organization? So before we jump there and before I introduce our panelists today, I did want to follow back with your homework assignment that I gave yesterday morning, or what are some other things that you learned yesterday that really stood out to you? Whether it was in the panel, whether it was in boardrooms, whether it was in one-on-ones, on the show floor. I want to get at least two things from you as an audience that really stuck out to you the last 24 hours that is going to be an aha thing you're going to take back to your organization. The need to educate the buyers on what we're doing. Man, should we pay him his $20 for setting us? Okay, good. We're going to talk about that today. Yeah, fantastic segue. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
Is that, if we're going to be investing additional cost into the build, we need to make sure we educate the buyers on the value that they're going to get from that. Okay. One other thing that you learned over the last 24 hours that's been a standout concept, standout product, something you hadn't thought of before. It is the next opportunity out there. That's why it was the lead-off session on Monday, is wellness, comfort, health, is that there's a lot of opportunity there, particularly as we're emerging a couple years from a pandemic, that's still top of mind for a lot of people to understand how meaningful that can be in your life, to have good air, to be comfortable temperature-wise, humidity-wise. Any other things that stood out? I got the two, so we can move on, but I want to make sure if anyone has anything else they want to share, they can. Okay. Well, fantastic. So as we've looked at health and wellness, we looked at the structural integrity and resilience of homes, and then yesterday afternoon looked at energy efficiency. We're going to take all those things and now package them up to today's topic of how do we then market and sell these structural and systems innovations. And with that as a lead off, let me have our panelists introduce themselves. We'll start off with, not me, but Jim.
Jim Weigel with Shin Consulting. I'm based in Denver. We work with home builders and land developers to help them become more profitable and become the builder of choice to their customers, their employees, their trades partners. We do that through a series of courses that we teach that are focused on owners and each of the key functions in the business: sales and marketing, finance, production, purchasing, estimating, all from a managerial standpoint. And that's what we've been focusing on for decades. All of us who are in the consulting side were clients originally, and had home building companies. I had a home building company with a partner, which we sold to what is now KB Homes 20 years ago, and had various other businesses in the home building business. And now I'm just focusing on working with our clients throughout the country.
By show of hands, any of you been clients of Shin Consulting? We've got a couple here in the room. Quite a few. Fantastic. All right, and next up, David.
Dave Bernardino, I'm the Chief Growth Officer of Ammunition. We're a marketing agency that works with a lot of brands in the home building industry. Brands like Westlake Royal Building Products, Georgia Pacific, LG on the HVAC side, Panasonic on the air quality side of the fence. So, been in the industry for about 10 years. We're also heavily involved in the NAHB. I'm actually the New Jersey state rep to the NAHB. So I might have seen some of you at various NAHB meetings and stuff like that. So appreciate being here.
Fantastic. So we're going to jump right into how do we unveil the invisible? We're talking about the systems and structures, the things behind the walls, and we've had a little touch on it throughout the various sessions of how do we market the benefits, not just the features. And one of the things I want to start off with first is just talking about part of the benefit to you as a builder of having better bones and the structures inside the walls is the ability to not have as much waste. And so Jim's going to walk us through a couple photos talking about some of the waste that can be saved in kind of a humorous way. So I know you probably can't see that one.
I can't. I'll stand up a bit. The short guy gets to stand up. Where this comes from is there's invisible things that add value and subtract value, and there's visible things that do the same to our homeowners. And also to each of us in the business. We don't see it a lot when we're walking by it. So we've kind of come up with a simple award ceremony that for people who show the biggest ways to waste things. And you probably don't have this on all of your sites, although you might be a potential award winner at times. These guys typically aren't. But the thing is, you probably have a little version of some of these things. Part of this is a potential buyer is not gonna really pay attention to you about how innovative and wonderful you are if you got a bunch of crap laying around your site every time they drive by. There's just really simple things we can do to help figure out where we're spending money and looking like we don't know what we're doing. So just stuff in the dirt all the time. This was one of the award categories is the most that we've been able to return in terms of lumber. And a lot of times people don't even return it. It just gets pounded into the mud, or somebody walks away with it to go refinish their basement or work on the next job. Same thing on a per pound basis. I mean, it just lays all over the place. And you can just flip through them fairly quickly, Brandon, if you want. Here's some stuff that we often don't think of when it comes to designing the house at the very beginning and the engineering of it. As far as we know, there's no contest for who puts the biggest pieces of wood inside their house. The buyers think that that's really important. They really don't do that, but we do that all the time. We're putting all kinds of big pieces of wood and steel everywhere because we can't figure out how to design it efficiently. Same thing in estimating. How many different pieces of trim do we need? How many different pieces of plywood or fiberboard? What do we need? Do we actually count them compared to how many we paid for? Or do we just kind of say, okay, well, we got 30% waste factor, that's close enough. How many pieces of wood, studs, do we really need to hold that wall up? Especially on the inside. I mean, some of them, what's this one got, 4 right there just for that?
I think it's got 8.
8, I wasn't counting it, good. So you just go count them, go look at them. This requires the intellect of a 12-year-old boy who loves to go count things, or a young lady who just loves to go figure out where dad is wasting all of his time. That was my daughter doing that too. Or how much engineered pieces do we need? You know, these guys get the award because anybody can walk through and figure this out. But, yes, that too. You know, just how many little tiny windows do we need? And what do they look out on? So these are all humorous because, that's not us. We don't do that. I guarantee you that when Ed and I, or my colleague Ed and I can just walk through anybody's place, we can find something. Somebody's got an example that's just embarrassing once someone else brings it up. And this is where, feel free to keep going through it, but these are the things that are causing you to spend all kinds of money, waste all kinds of time in building the house, and you're spending your buyer's dollars where you could otherwise be spending it on something that's really cool, indoor air quality, or some way to manage the lighting better. But we're not. We don't have the margin to be able to go experiment with it and to go do the marketing to educate our buyers. And if they see all this kind of stuff laying around, they're not going to listen to you.
So one is making sure that what you're doing on the site is consistent with your brand messaging of being innovative, by being thoughtful. So turning to Dave, can you share, we're going to kind of go through a whole bunch of different things over the course of this panel, but what are some of the effective strategies on how to market the benefits of structural and system innovations to buyers?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, right, it starts with understanding your target audience and trying to figure out what are they seeking at the end of the day, right? If you're thinking about indoor air quality, what's the overarching benefit or what's the overarching need that indoor air quality delivers against? You know, is that particular home buyer suffering from allergies? Is that particular home buyer concerned about respiratory disease or things like that? Yeah, so really peeling the onion to understand what that is, and then mapping out your customer journey and figuring out, okay, at what touch points can you start to activate that messaging to them as they're going through that proverbial path to purchase to say, hey, I'm interested in buying your home. I got to learn more. To your point earlier, I got to get educated about how this home is better than that home down the street. How do you start to activate it in a certain way, but in a way that makes it easy for the consumer to understand? Because at the end of the day, right, we got a lot of stuff that's behind the wall in particular that to the consumer it's too long, don't read, right? Especially as you think about them in the home buying process. They're getting overburdened with stuff, right? And so how do you delight them? Or how do you keep it simple for them to understand? And actually there are other industries that do that. Not sure if that's a segue to that, but there are other industries that, in my opinion, have cracked the code on that.
And I think maybe before we jump to that, the thing that pops into my mind is that as a builder, can you effectively articulate your strategy? How are you going to win in the competitive landscape? And what market are you trying to target? We had yesterday, and on Monday, we had Dennis Webb, who with Fulton Homes, they have a very clear strategy as to what type of market they're going to go into and what their strategic differentiator is, how they're different from the other builders. If you're going out there and you don't have a strategic differentiator and you're just doing the same thing that everyone else is doing, then the differentiator by default becomes price.
I think this thing about strategy is many folks say, oh, I have to do all this stuff. The thing about strategy is you're saying no to stuff as well. The most important thing about strategy is saying no. Because think about it, you can only do a few things really, really well. Focus on the things that are actually going to matter for you, that are advantageous for you, that, to your point, Brandon, is differentiated in the marketplace. Because if you do that, that drives value. That drives premium pricing. Don't give the consumer the opportunity to default to price.
Yeah, just to add on to that, we think there's all these different choices, but if you can focus on 1 to 3 that are really important to your buyers, one client in particular in the Northwest, they've been focusing on energy efficiency for decades. They're the leader in that. But they don't really stress it all the time. They just, here's how they identify that in the sales process all the way through. So for example, if indoor air quality, as David was important to you, talk about it up front to those buyers. You're going to market that way as well, but also through the building process as that superintendent is sending pictures to the buyers every week about the status. Here's the things that we're doing inside the walls that make a difference to indoor air quality. So we keep reinforcing that every time. We do that at the homeowner orientation, and we do that as we educate them how to maintain the house once they're living in it.
I think the key thing here is understanding your target consumer. Mm-hmm. And I can't stress that enough. In this industry, I came from the packaged goods world, consumer packaged goods and consumer healthcare, where market research was literally par for the course. Spending a lot of time just talking to your consumers about your brands, your categories, understanding how they behave today and where you want them to be and what are the barriers. For whatever reason, we don't do that. And I think the clarion call here is for us to start being more methodical about consumer understanding, because there are many ways to understand what is important to your consumer. And by doing that, you can then start to leverage those insights to make fact-based decisions, as opposed to, my gut says X, I hope it's going to work, right? But doing the homework up front, yes, it takes time and investment, but I could argue that investment is going to speed up your marketing process and your sales process down the road, and probably is going to increase your hit rate.
Going back to your comment about being able to say no, Steve Jobs has a really famous quote about this. He says, people think focus means saying yes to the thing you've got to focus on. But that's not what it means at all. It means saying no to the 100 other good ideas that there are. You have to pick carefully. He says, I'm actually as proud of the things we haven't done as the things I have done. Innovation is saying no to 1,000 things and being very, very focused. I'll share one short anecdote from my life, and then we'll talk about learning from other industries. I've got a bunch of teenage boys, well, they're teenage boys now, but roll back the clock 6 years ago, they were just starting to become teenagers, and I was looking for something to do during the summer. So we started a small little business, and the business was renting bounce houses for parties. Now we focused, my major was on strategy, and so I carved out and said, here's the market that I want to target. I want to target mothers who maybe otherwise couldn't afford this, so I want it to be a good price, but are willing to come, they'll pick it up, they'll set it up, and they'll drop it off. And that means we're focusing on really ages 12 years old and younger, because you can get a smaller class of bounce houses. It's not as big, it's not 200 pounds, it's like 50 pounds, that fits in a bag that can easily fit in the back of a minivan. But we're not going to set it up because I want to be able to scale. I want to be like, we're going to open up on Saturday, people will just drive in, they'll pick up their bounce house, they go for the weekend, they'll bring it back on Monday morning. We get calls all the time still, people saying, well, will you come and drop off and deliver? And I know I could charge them a lot to do that, but that's not our strategy. It's like, nope, you want to do that? This business in town will absolutely do that for you. Ours is pick up and delivery. We say no plenty of times, but we've been able to carve out a very specific niche of people that value that particular type of product, and it works. And I think that's what you have to do as a builder too, is to say, what is the niche that we're going to, and it can still be a broad niche, but it's being able to say no to things that are outside of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so learning from other sectors.
So like I said, I sort of gave the segue. I used to work in the consumer packaged goods and consumer healthcare worlds. I'm going to ask a question. How many of you took some sort of medicine or drug this morning? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you actually know how the drug works inside of you? Raise your hand. But yet, you're taking the medicine, right? Why do you take it? Raise your hand if you say, because it works. It helps alleviate my symptoms or whatever, right? Think about that, right? There are industries that are out there already that are successfully marketing products whose method of action is invisible to the consumer.
Yeah, we don't really think about all the way the things are happening inside our body, but we're willing to ingest certain things to make things work right. I think the parallel there to a house where the customers don't maybe really understand how the load is being bared through this or how the fasteners are, but they do care about some of the outcomes.
Yeah, and an example I like to give is Advil versus Tylenol, right? They provide similar benefits, right? Pain relief. But the method of action is very different. Advil reduces inflammation versus Tylenol reduces the pain receptors in your brain. The consumer doesn't know that. It's just you pop the pills and it makes you feel better. And so we'll share some examples from consumer healthcare because I think it provides an interesting analogy for the work that we're trying to do as far as how do you elevate the stuff that's behind the wall in a way that's compelling for the consumer. So early morning thing, I like to show ads. This is an ad from a brand I actually used to work on, Miralax. The laxative category right after breakfast. But when we were working on this, we were trying to figure out from the consumer's perspective, why should they care about Miralax? And the key thing here was that the method of action, which is rooted in the ingredient, PEG 3350 if you want to get technical, draws the water out of the stomach into the colon and makes the crap go down more easily than X-Lax and Dulcolax. But the question is, how do you dramatize that in a way that enables the consumer to understand? This is some advertising. I think you might have seen it in 2016. Let's air the ad, and then we can talk about it further.
Yeah, as you watch, here's what I want you to look for. What are ways that are helping the customer, the potential customer, understand what it does and how it works, and then how might you be able to translate that to building?
Yep. So again, core benefit, right? Unlocking your system naturally, easy, safe, and effective. And then you see the divergent comparison of, oh, I don't want something to force a reaction in my body. Again, that understanding came through a massive understanding of your consumer. Spent a lot of time talking to consumers, understanding why this versus that, which came to that insight. Let's go to another ad to keep this free-flowing here. Go ahead.
Do you mind if I mention it? When David first showed us this when we were practicing for this, and I thought about, there's an exact analogy in the home building business. Do any of you ever get complaints for the sound of the water after it's flushing that goes through the walls? Yes, this happens all the time. And what we can do is deaden the sound. It's very easy to do, to put that inside the wall, and then you can show the difference between here's where we didn't deaden it, and here's where we did, and they can listen to it as that water goes through and they don't hear anything from it. That's a huge benefit to someone who's had to live through that, either in apartment homes or older homes, where they don't have that kind of sound protection.
Yeah. Here's another brand. You might have seen it. This is a brand that literally came from nothing to $3 billion in a number of years. It was focused on the notion of every other brand in the category was talking about a different part of the body. This is cough cold we're talking about. And this brand decided to hone in on the thing that no one talked about. And how do you start to elevate this? Again, very simple as far as articulating the benefit, right? Cough relief, you can sleep at night, but the method of action. No one knows what guaifenesin does. It just gets Mr. Mucus out, right? But that simple ad literally unlocked the $3 billion growth trajectory for this brand. And literally, if you go to the cough cold section today, right, it's flu season. It's literally the top selling brand that's out there. But again, it was rooted in a consumer truth about, all right, what is the consumer expecting in this space? And to what you were saying earlier, Jim, understanding how these different systems that we're bringing to bear in the industry and making it Sesame Street simple for the consumer is really critical. We can show the third ad, just for that dramatization of how it works in a very simple way. That brand is what? A $2 billion business selling heartburn medicine, right? So I think there are parallels in this industry as far as how we can start to dimensionalize the end benefit of what we're trying to market, right? An ERV system versus not having an ERV system, right? An integrated ventilation system versus not, right? The deadening of the sound of the water drain versus not, right? There are all these simple things that allow you to very easily differentiate yourself versus the builder down the street, which ultimately for a consumer that you're trying to target means something. And by delivering that benefit to her or him, you're able to drive premium pricing because you're delivering on what they want. Because at the end of the day, we're pricing for value.
Exactly. And the biggest competitor we have is the used home market. And so you take just that great idea of here's the hot symbol and the cold symbol. We have that all the time with dead spots in used homes, where it's really hot over here and it's really cold by the window. We can fix that with our new homes. We can cause that comfort to exist uniformly throughout the house. And here's how we do it if people are really interested into it. But if they aren't interested, we don't have to go through it. But we can use simple little techniques like this from other industries and how they're really good at marketing and learning what homeowners need and what people need. And that's we can go steal that information as to how they do it. And David is kindly telling us how to do that right now. Just watch the commercials and see how they are targeting that.
So I think
cars are great too. Car commercials are awesome for us.
I think some of the techniques that I see in those videos that seem pretty easy to translate is one, it's just simple diagrams. If you're trying to explain how an ERV works, you can very quickly get into the weeds of the permeability that's allowing the humidity to go through, when really it's as simple as we're bringing outside air in, we're bringing your inside air out, and they're in a chamber briefly where the temperature and the humidity are exchanging and they continue on their ways. Mm-hmm. And I can envision a very simple diagram or animation that shows how that works. The other technique there is the personification of the problem. Mr. Mucus, of putting it into a little person, and we can all see how the taking something that's annoying and putting it into an annoying person, or the little flame mm-hmm. thing that's personified, that's showing the heartburn, mm-hmm. of taking some of the pain points and trying to personify them for our customers. One could be the noisy toilet flush. You can picture mm-hmm. some type of character that's representing that embarrassing feeling when you hear that noise. How can you then incorporate that into print, into video, into web ads that help demonstrate the value of some of the features that you offer?
Yeah.
Okay. Building internal marketing capabilities. So we recognize that some of you may not have a full-time marketing staff that's doing all of this stuff. So how do you bridge that gap? So going to to Jim first. How have you seen builders equip themselves with the right marketing capabilities to effectively sell these innovations? Where can individuals go if they either want to give additional resources to their existing marketing resources, the marketing personnel, or if they don't have marketing personnel, what can they do?
Let me talk about a few different ways to focus on this. One is, as David mentioned, understanding your customer well. You can do a whole bunch of research on it, but it's hard to pay for. It takes time, and then it's even harder to interpret those results. But we have one of the best ways to do market research of anyone in the world, even compared to Gillette or the best marketeers in the world. We can just go talk to our customers and see how they live in their homes. We can see exactly who that target market is by putting a picture of that customer and their family, not only on the wall, but in our hearts and in our brains, and see how they live. Just that one targeted customer will spread across everyone else that you're working with, asking them, what do they listen to, what's important to them, why did they buy, what was driving them nuts where they live right now. Related to that is, especially if you're doing custom homes or a lot of options and upgrades, go to the place where they live right now and see how they use it and see where they frown and don't like it. Because then you can show, here's what we do inside of our homes and inside of our processes to change that. Because the big thing is, a lot of people right now, they're not even interested in moving because rates are too high and home prices are too high, so they're not even paying attention to it. But something's pissing them off about their home right now. If we can go find what that is and get them to at least pay attention to us, it may be a 2 or 3 year cycle, especially if it's an active adult that you have to go after, but you'll eventually get them. So that's understanding your customer and a few things that our clients are working with that really are successful. The other piece is you have to keep hitting that information throughout the buying cycle. So we have, here's what's really clear about what we do with our buyers and why we're different from the used home and from the 1 or 2 other competitors that you might look at. Here's what's different about us, especially in our process, the way we work with people. For example, the company I was telling you about who's been working with energy efficiency for decades. That's not what they stress in their marketing. What they stress is they're really easy to work with. It was a refreshing change compared to all of the other builders we worked with to buy a home. They're just a great process. And then they add this icing on the cake that's energy efficient and good indoor air quality. But then we're doing that throughout the process. In your design center and your selection process, we're reinforcing, here's that benefit. And remember you said you really wanted indoor air quality? Here's the things that we can add in our bundled packages. They're not little separate things that we bundle all this stuff together so they don't have to make 50 different choices. They just choose between 3 or 4 bundles. And then we go through that. Here we're sending you information throughout the building process. And remember how we said that here's how that sound deadening works? We're putting it in right now. And here's what it looks like, and here's what it's going to sound like that's different. So we're reinforcing it all throughout the cycle, even through the maintenance. And then we're even adding into it, hey, guess what? We may do a 3-year maintenance program for you on a quarterly basis. And really what it is, they're paying something for it because everybody's used to extended warranties now. They get that. So they're willing to pay for that, but it also becomes a referral opportunity for us to everyone else and an event place where how about if you host a cocktail party for some of your friends and neighbors and we'll just talk about homes and what they do. Now you have an automatic focus group that you can deal with your own customers and their neighbors. So that's just a few, if it makes sense.
Dave, some of your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'd actually build upon that because, understanding your consumer in context gets you the most honest answers. When you're put in behind the one-way mirror, they tend to not be as open, particularly when you're talking about personal stuff. So the more that you're able to get in home, in context, to understand how they think, feel, and behave, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, to really understand their current behavior vis-a-vis everything in the home. That allows you to get those insights and understand, hey, what do I need to do differently, to your point, Jim, as far as addressing those needs. And doing it that way, it's just time. That's all it is. Like, you can do an in-home visit in an hour. When I was at Procter & Gamble, we used to do it all the time. We didn't have money, we had a travel budget, so we would literally spend time living with consumers in-home, understand what they were doing in a particular category. It's amazing what you can get just by seeing the world through your target audience's eyes.
I'm curious, how many of you do some type of survey or interview post-build, post-move-in, we'll say maybe within the first month of the customer moving into the home? Okay. How many of you do another survey that's somewhere earlier than 6 months after they've moved into the home? Okay. How many of you are doing one that's maybe a year after they've been in the home? Okay, that's good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we can probably talk about that in kind of the next little section. But I think that getting that feedback from them and really being thoughtful about the questions you're asking and how you're gathering that information can be pretty meaningful. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm curious on that. So you survey your own customers. How about your competitors' customers who bought at the same time, the same price range? Anybody doing that?
How would you go about doing that?
You just go get the multi-list sales for that same time frame.
Go knock on the door?
You can knock on the easiest way is doing interviews. You just knock on the door, or you can send them a survey. You can just say, we're generically surveying folks, period. And the even bigger one is the used homes. Exact same price range, exact same time frame. Because what you're trying to do is compare and contrast.
Yeah.
What are your folks saying compared to what the other guys are saying? And then you can see where to move, what makes you unique.
Another way to do it is actually get the folks that that have considered your home, that went to your model home and rejected you, went somewhere else, because you already have their contact information, and ask them, like, why did you say no to us?
Yep,
Like, what has to be true for you to have said yes?
exactly.
I think let's lean into this a little bit more. What are some other effective, either survey questions, either on paper or in person, that deliver a lot of value when it comes to this topic?
I would start with, here are all the attributes of a home. Rank them in importance as far as your importance for purchasing a home. Like, what are the things that actually matter to them? Is it interior quality? Is it the space? Is it the layout? Is it the kitchen? Whatever it is, like, ask them to rank what matters to them. Ask them to rank what are the things that aren't important to them. What are the motivators for wanting to move? Like, what are you seeking in a new home? For the rejectors, as I said before, folks that rejected your home, why do you go somewhere else? What has to be true for them to choose you versus someone else? You start going down the rabbit hole really quickly, but you can start to understand it's all about habits and attitudes and practices, if you're thinking about it from a broad themes perspective.
Yeah.
This has been one of the best successes for me and my clients for a long, long time. Many of you actually work with customers and sell them homes in here.
How many of you are doing face-to-face customer interaction in your role? Not that many.
Okay, you don't have to pay attention to me then. Everybody else, just go get the phone number of the people who closed homes or purchased a home or somewhere in the process, and get one, just try one a week. Someone in your company. I don't care if you are in finance, if you are in purchasing, if you're the owner, go call a homeowner or a home buyer and say, how's it going? What do you like about the home and the process, and what don't you like? Just ask them a few open-ended questions, and you do that for about 8 to 10 weeks, you will now know a lot of good stuff. And you've created a habit of listening to your customers and asking about what's important to them. So now when you go into that new product development meeting, it's not just 5 or 6 people with their own personal opinions about it. You all know something about 8 to 10 customers that you've all worked with, and you know something way more detailed about what they want. So rather than you spending your customer dollars in designing the home, you're allowing them to spend their dollars.
The other place I would go, and we all hate social media, but it's here and here to stay. look at the comments of yours and your competitors. You
Yeah.
can actually go to your town, like most towns have like a community website. So I live in Randolph, New Jersey. There's Randolph residents or multiple town community boards, and just hit the search function, custom home, new home. It's amazing what comes up, and it's amazing what folks will say peer to peer and why.
Yep.
I spent a good portion of my career as over customer experience. And although it wasn't in the building industry, I'll share a few tips that I learned, particularly when it comes to surveying, because I agree, it's an opportunity to gain a lot of information into how your customers think. We would do surveys, post-interaction, post-purchase, and anytime a customer would call in. Where I saw a lot of value was in kind of the Net Promoter Score question. If you're not familiar with Net Promoter Score, it's on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to refer a friend, family, colleague to our product or our company? And that's part of it. The second part is an immediate follow-up question that is open-ended, like Jim was saying, and that is, what is the reason for your score? And then if you're asking a customer those two questions, you can then take your 9s and your 10s in the Net Promoter Score parlance, that's called your promoters, and then you look at why they say they gave you a 9 or a 10, and you look for themes in there, because that's going to tell you what you as an organization are good at and what your customers appreciate about your service or your product. You need to know that, because as you're trying to improve things, you need to make sure you retain those good things, and you make sure that all your employees know these are the things that our customers appreciate about us already. We can't lose any of those things. It'd be great to add to them, but we want to make sure we don't make any changes to anything that's going to make any of those things go away. Anyone who gives you a score 6 and under is considered a detractor, and when you ask them what's the reason for your score, then you start seeing some trends as to and you have to think through what's the root cause for what they're telling me they don't like. Maybe they didn't like this particular product house. It's like, well, what did we do that caused that? Was it a poor training of our construction staff? Was it, we picked the wrong product to install? And really diving into that. And as you gather that information over time, you can start putting into buckets and say, what's the most common reason we have detractors within our company, and focus on that.
Yep.
I think there's some real value in the open-ended question, talking to customers, getting real feedback, talking to people who were almost customers who didn't choose you, and maybe asking that same question about their experience with you.
And there are a lot of tools out there that allow you to cluster the data really easily. That's where AI comes in, actually. It's a great use case for AI. Being able to just put a whole slew of information and just have AI sort it for you, such that you don't actually have to be sifting through reams of Excel spreadsheet data.
Yeah, we're working together with AV in this afternoon session. If we can get everything all lined up, I'm actually going to do some demos for some of our topic on ChatGPT. Yeah, and to Dave's portion, yeah, it is fantastic. I use that for feedback from my students all the time. If I've got 48 students who've answered a particular open-ended question, I'll copy and paste that in the ChatGPT and say, please summarize the themes. And it will immediately pick out the things that are mentioned the most often. If I want it to, it can say these are the students who mentioned that, so I can, address that. But it can save you a lot of time. Any other thoughts on this topic? Well, we've kind of gone a little bit off script, but I think it was good.
It was good.
All right. Anything else on? I don't know if we actually addressed this as head on. Of what else can teams do to be able to build internal marketing capabilities? So the question I had for Dave is, what digital assets and strategies can be employed to demonstrate value to customers, and how might they be able to build up their internal marketing capabilities?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, right, it's about going back to what we were talking about before. First, understand your consumer, really defining what your brand's all about. And we'll talk about value proposition and understanding the consumer behavior journey. You can either do that internally or partner with agencies to help you do that. This is where outsourcing becomes potentially an interesting conversation. But at the end of the day, it's about bringing the capabilities into the building. And if you don't want to make the investment in, there are many agencies that can do it for you, in your particular market, whether they're experts in the industry or not, but that's what they're trained to do. You could also just hire marketing interns. I've seen builders do that as well, where you're going to your local community college, or you're going to your local state university, and in exchange for credit, it's like, hey, help solve this marketing challenge for me. Like, my local HBA in New Jersey, they do that with Rutgers. You know, Rutgers University and some of the community colleges where they actually come in and a couple builders actually said, here's our business plan for the year. Make sense of it and help us understand what marketing strategies we need to do next year to grow our business. It's open to you and it's free, right? So it's not like you have to cut a massive check in order to get these capabilities into the building, but if you want, you know, something that's more robust, you know, it becomes a make or buy conversation, and really that's up to you as far as how you want to do it. You know, if you want to make it, you hire the right people into the building. If you want to buy it, there's certainly a lot of agencies that can help you with those tasks.
Okay, so now getting into a little more detail on how do we engage customers throughout the journey. So Dave, how can we better understand the entire customer journey, and by doing so, how does that enhance engagement at each of the touch points?
Yeah, I think if you go to the next chart, you know, we like to map out what is called the consumer behavior journey, because at the end of the day, as marketers, our job is to change behavior, right? Your potential customer is doing something fundamentally different today. You want them to do something totally different tomorrow. So what we actually do is put on a chart, literally on the left-hand side. This is what we call internally a think, feel, do chart. Actually, it was a re-application of something that P&G uses to this day. It was developed in the 1930s, this framework. But at the end, you want to, on the left-hand side, plot out what is the current consumer behavior, i.e., how do they think, how do they feel, and how do they behave vis-a-vis your category, your product, your brand, your service, whatever it may be. It really forces you to distill all of that consumer understanding that we've talked about for the past 20 minutes into those 3 buckets. On the right-hand side, recall we talked about strategy as choices. The right-hand side is a strategic call on your side as far as how do you want your target audience to think, feel, and behave in the future as a result of interacting with you. Obviously, the do is purchase your home or purchase these services, but how do you want them to think about you? How do you want them to feel about your experience, the home, and all that stuff? Plot that out strategically. In the middle, there's obviously things that are getting in the way, whether it's an unmet need, whether it's a barrier to adoption, whatever it is, start putting it on paper. Because you start to put all those elements on one sheet, you can start to think about, this is how they're behaving today. I want them to go here. This is what's getting in the way. Here's some messaging or some things that I can do to bridge that gap. If you go to the next chart, this is where the value proposition statement comes into play. We call it single-minded proposition. Some of you have heard it called a positioning statement. But at the end, you want to articulate something as simple as because ABC Builder gives, provides, develops X. And that X for the consumer is a benefit or a offering or whatever it is. You, the target audience, gets something. It's got to be one thing. Because if you think about it, going back to what we were talking about earlier, consumer can only digest 1 to 2, 3 things. If you throw them 50 million things at them, they're not going to understand anything at all.
So can you give an example of that statement, maybe positioned around clean air inside the home?
So because I'll use because Panasonic delivers a great ERV system, you, the consumer, get fresh, clean, healthy air at home. Because something as simple as that. One thing. Because if you're able to articulate that one thing, it becomes really easy for your internal marketers or an agency to translate that into advertising. Going back to the pharmaceutical examples that we saw earlier, there was one benefit or 1 or 2 benefits in each of those ads.
What was the one for laxative?
Clean and safe and effective. Mm-hmm. Safe and effective. That was the core benefit. For Mucinex, right, it was get the mucus out. Prilosec, right, relieve the burn. Right, you can start to articulate that. And then if you start to deploy that messaging, right, so you have sort of the value statement and then the reasons to believe, you start to deploy that in creative across the marketing journey, as Jim had mentioned, those repetitions become imprinted into the consumer's brain such that when it comes time for them to say, do I want to choose you as a builder or someone else as a builder, they've already been primed to select you because you've already articulated messaging that addresses what they want. Because ultimately, that's what we're in the business of doing. We're addressing what they want and delighting them.
Jim, thoughts?
I'm just curious what David thinks. Do you take any of that and then do a comparison. Here's us versus our competitor. Here's us versus a used home or your current situation. Do you do that much with comparisons?
Well, you look at the three commercials.
Yeah.
Two of them did comparisons in
Yeah.
them. So here's
Yeah.
what the other guy does. Here's what we do.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer of comparisons. Many times in my career, it depends. Especially if you're the number 2 brand or not the number 1 brand in the category or in the market, absolutely go after your competitors. Fortunately there are no lawyers in the room, but you go as far as possible. Like when I was in the consumer packaged goods world, I used to get cease and desist letters all the time from my competitors. That was viewed as a good thing. Because that meant I was pushing the envelope as far as claims, right? Go as far as you can as far as claims. The worst thing that they're going to do is send you a cease and desist letter. Okay, I'm not going to air the ad anymore, but they've already seen it. So comparative claims, absolutely go to town. Go to town in comparative claims. Because at the end of the day, you want to lay that seed of doubt about your competition, particularly if they're the bigger player in town, compared to you. What a better way to do it than to talk about how you're better than they are.
So going through our 3 sessions, here's some examples of how you can compare and contrast. You can say, your house has an ERV. The competitors are not putting it in. They're letting the same air just kind of sit in the home till you click on the heat or the cold. We're going to make sure you're getting fresh air in there on a regular basis. And here's all the benefits that come from having fresh air. Look at the second session. If you were to adopt using CFS, the cold form steel, you can say, competitors are using wood. And talk about all the reasons why wood is not as good as we're building with cold form steel. If you're looking at energy efficiency, whether you're building solar panels and the competitor is not, focus on, here's the total cost of ownership. Here's what your utility costs are going to be with the other guys, and here's what it is with us because of how we've designed your home.
Yeah, some of the effective ways I've been seeing the past year people doing that is to say, here's the base that we have to have that we compare against our competitor. Say it's a used home, say it's another builder. But here's the value that we provide, here's the list of the stuff, and here's what that value is compared to what the other competitor's doing. We have to at least be equal there. Here's what we're doing. And then what we're saying is, here's the other stuff we're providing, and here's all the different features and their benefits compared to the other builder, compared to the existing home. And here's what that total value is, and we're giving it to you for something less than that. So you're seeing that either in terms of payment, if that's important to people, or interest rate, but definitely price. Here's the value that they're getting out of that compared to the other folks, and here's the details that behind it, so we can go verify that with what. If you got an engineer who's going to be one of your buyers, they're going to want to verify everything, right? But some folks are not. So you can use that for various different target markets you've got to go into more detail or not, depending on how their personality evaluates that.
If you're doing the exact same, building the same type of house as your competitors, what are customers going to compare?
Price.
Price. And then it just becomes a race to the bottom. It's figuring out how you differentiate, focus on that benefit, and you can charge more if you deliver more.
They already start that way. We've already commoditized ourselves pretty well. Everybody, you look at how people search, 3-bedroom under, 500,000, whatever it is, we're already a commodity in most places. So we have to move ourselves out of that view. So another way to do that is we are now starting to deal with what's important to them in their life. Like, I want to be able to travel more. So you've got information about traveling and how to take care of the home while you're away, or it's about pets. So now you're working with PetSmart, and you're doing events for the pet owners in your community. So you're aiming towards what's important to them in their life. And you're becoming a source of information, not just in the home building side, but what else is important to them in their life. And now you're different, because no other home builders are doing that. Not even Lennar and those guys are doing that stuff right now. I've just seen it with a few private builders, and they're being highly successful with that.
Dave talked a little bit earlier about how the upcoming generation, they make choices based on reviews of their peers. It's pretty common. And so what your online presence looks like is important. Going back to those survey questions, making sure that you're sending, even if it's a simple 2-question survey, throughout the entire customer journey. Anytime that your customer has an interaction with someone from your staff, whether it's they just visit the design center, whether they just met with, someone else is giving them an update on the status of the home, whether it's even a phone call, sending a quick and easy survey that says, hey, we know you just talked to Jan in the design center yesterday. On a scale of 1 to 10, tell us how that experience went. And the follow-up question, what is the reason for your score? And you're going to be able to sense when things are going good and know what was good about that interaction. You're going to be able to know when things are bad about that interaction. But another part of doing that throughout the process is, particularly if the customer did have a bad experience at the design center or getting an update on the timeline, if you solicit that, if you send that email, that gives them a chance to complain, and that gives you a chance to resolve. And by having that in between, hey, temperature check, it's going to prevent them from going out onto the internet and saying, oh, we had a terrible experience with this company. You're going to be able to try to capture those before they create a negative review. And on the flip side, if you're able to provide an amazing customer experience all the way through from the beginning to the end, you're going to know that in that last survey. They're going to say that this was a fantastic journey. We loved every time we interacted with someone with your company. We thought you communicated things clearly. You met timelines. When you see that survey that they're just replying to you, that is an opportunity for you to be able to say, hey, I'm glad everything went really well for you. If I take those comments, I send those back to you, and if I give you a link to our Facebook page or to our Google review page, would you be willing to post that on there and share that with others? Because you will see, my experience has been, by inviting people to do that, by giving them the link to remove as much friction as possible from them leaving that review, you will see the numbers increase quite a bit. Like our numbers in a kind of different industry is we had a lot more volume of interactions with customers, and so I was getting these surveys. I'd get 100 of these surveys filled out a day. We'd have 10 that would be exceptionally good. The customers were just raving about us. I had a dedicated employee who would then reach out to those 10 a day, say, hey, we really appreciate your comments, glad you had a good experience, would you be willing to share? And if we asked 10 of them to do that, we'd maybe have 2 that would actually do it. And it was a numbers game, but you had to ask them. But by doing that, on our Google review page, we had 2 positive reviews every single day because we had this engine going. And although the time frame may be very different for builders, you're not going to get them every day, but by having that constantly looking for opportunities to invite your happy customers, your raving fans to post online, that becomes a great selling tool compared to your competition. That if you're getting regular posts, positive reviews on your site compared to your competitor, it makes it easier to sell.
Heck, put in your contracts. You reserve the right to take pre-post pictures and talk to the consumer at your discretion.
Yep.
I know a lot of builders in New Jersey do that. It's baked into the contract.
And walk us through exactly, if it's in the contract, then how do they
So then
follow
after the
through?
project, they can say, hey, were you satisfied? Hey, great, can we do an interview and testimonial? Put it on our website.
Right.
There you go.
You've already got the consumer's agreement because it was baked into the initial purchase contract.
How many of you are asking your customers to post a positive review? How are you doing that? Anyone want to share specifically how you go about doing that? Is it just through an email? Is it someone face-to-face asking them to do it? When you get those positive surveys from the customer, sharing it with the team that actually generated it does get them more incentivized to, I want to get the next customer to say something fantastic and mention my name. And sharing that company-wide creates that incentive. Yeah, it's the Hall of Fame or the Hall of Shame, depends on what's on there. That can be incredibly motivating for your staff, and particularly if they know that at the top ranks within the company, the executive team sees that, cares about that, and rewards. Yep.
Yeah.
Other thoughts on the customer journey?
I think never underestimate the times when crap happens, right? Use it as those opportunities to over-deliver and shine, because a lot of times, and I'll quote a jazz musician, John Coltrane, there's no such thing as a bad note, it's just a bad resolution. use that opportunity where something bad happens to over-delight your customer, because chances are that's the thing that they're going to remember most about their experience with you. And if you over-deliver on their expectations, boom, you've just bought a customer for life.
It's a gift. Them complaining is a gift. You have to look at it that way, that they cared enough to be able to share it with you because they wanted you to fix it.
Yeah.
And when you don't fix it, that's when things go sideways. If you listen and look for ways to over-delight, that is how you win customers for life. Okay, questions. We're kind of wrapping up the content we had. We've got 4 minutes left. Any other questions from the audience on things that you felt like we may not have answered? Do you feel like you have some ideas and concepts of what you can do to better market and sell your product to your target audience?
Yeah, and Tim was talking about it yesterday.
Could you repeat the question just for the tape?
What I'm hearing Kevin say, Kevin, is what do you do when interest rates are high, direct construction costs are still high, and the buyers can't afford the home? Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, it's the number one pain point, right? So
Okay. And it's different for different builders, first of all. It may be your pain point, and it is definitely the case for a lot of builders who are in the more, I'm going to say, under 400,000 price range for the most part, just to draw a line. And what Tim was talking about yesterday is buying forward commitments. And I'll just give you one of my clients' experience. They've had great gross margins and great profitability for years. And so if you don't have that, it's very difficult to buy down the rate. And buying forward commitments, they've been buying them down to 3.75%. And so they're buying it down almost 4 points right now. And they're spending, but what they've also been able to do is raise the price a little bit. So the price is more expensive than others, builders. But so they're using some of that higher price, but they're also paying, probably 5 to 8 points of their margin, and then the buyers are paying another couple points to close, but they're hitting that payment point. And they've got the absorption rate exactly what they want. They keep controlling that absorption rate based on where the interest rates are. So, and that addresses the payment issue. That if that really is the pain point, is payment, the best way is coming back. It used to be standard. It was standard for decades, the 80s through 90s, early 2000s. Forward commitments was a common way of dealing with payment issues in higher interest rate environments. So that's just one example, Kevin, and we can talk about some more if you want. But then there's, I'd say the other key thing is we have to take stuff out of the house that buyers are not willing to pay for, including our margin. And most of us are not doing a good job of that fast enough. Then we're going to have to redesign that house. I'm not saying you got to hit a 400 square foot home like we saw in the movie yesterday, but it's probably going to be a little bit smaller in some room sizes if we want to hit that affordability target.
30-second answer, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, no, I would say design from the ground up as far as going back to what do the consumer really want, and give them that alone. We can talk offline. I face that conundrum in other markets where you're delivering first world benefits, and how do you deliver it at 1/10 the cost and earn 10% EBITDA margin? Like you had to really be choiceful as far as what was actually in that particular product.
Well, fantastic. Well, we're going to wrap up. Please join me in a round of applause for our panelists today.